Good evening. Is this on yet?
That doesn't sound so it's on.
It's on now? Yes. No? Yes.
Yes. You're live. Excuse me.
All right, well, thank you so much for inviting us to be here tonight. And Esther. Esther is the youngest, but she is and has become absolutely passionate. I will get to Esther in a minute, but before I even get to talk about the camp, I need to tell you a little bit how it started for me. I left the Bahamas at age 16, and I ended up in France at age 19, and I grew up there, and at some point I was able to meet a young lady. She was from Czechoslovakia. Her name is Daniela Langer, and she is a musicologist, and she was an absolute connoisseur of Bahamian music. She knew all she knew Joseph Spence. She even, as a child, 12 years old, had learned to sing some of the rhyming spirituals. And so when she came to Paris as an adult, she wanted to do a feature on the French National Radio on Bahamian music. And I was at a party where a journalist friend of hers who was able to find a vinyl in a flea market, because those, at that time, there was nothing left. Since then, they've been re-edited. And so I was fortunate enough to meet Daniela, and she sat and told me a lot about who I was that I didn't know. Of course, I'd heard this music growing up in the Bahamas, but I had no idea of the value. And so one thing did lead to another, and in the end, with Daniela's encouragement, I formed a trio there. And I did some very, very prestigious concerts, again, not even aware. And there were always experts and musicologists and journalists at everything I was doing, because they found that the rhyming spirituals is so fascinating. And so that began my journey into understanding how important it is to preserve our music. So just a little bit about the rhyming. I'll try and be very, very brief. There was a gentleman named Samuel Barclay Charles, and if you don't know him, we owe him the recordings we have. He came to the Bahamas, and he went to Andres, and on Joseph Spence's back porch, they recorded an album of rhyming spirituals. And it's thanks to him. In fact, this gentleman said that for me, the writing about black music was my way of fighting racism. That's why my work is not academic. That is why it is absolutely nothing but popularization. I wanted people to hear black music, as I said in the Poetry of the Blues. It's where I say, you know, if by introducing music I can have somebody look across the racial divide and see a black face and see the person as a human being. And that's why my work is unashamedly romantic. All right, so that was, and so we owe him all the earlier recordings of the blues, and thank God he came to the Bahamas and recorded Joseph Spence. So Spence, for those of you that don't know him, was a stonemason, and yet he is unparalleled in the world today as a guitar player. He inspired many guitarists. Taj Mahal came to Nassau. Ry Cooder literally became an adept and became famous because he played in Spence's style. The Grateful Dead would record I Bid You Good Night, which is one of the rhyming spirituals that was sang at wakes and funerals. And so Andrea insisted that I that I have you hear what this music is. And so what I did was I chose one of me performing in Paris. I did a whole feature on the Bahamas. I started with, I think, the chutneys, and I worked my way up to Calypso at the end. So it was a very long show, and Daniela was there and other journalists, and it's recorded. So I went back, and hopefully this will sound all right to you. The rhyming spiritual does not mean that it's rhymes. It's an extraordinary music that I hope before I leave Earth that I will be able to help in reviving, because it is truly one of the pearls that we can't lose. Daniela says that it is the missing link between what the slaves sang on the plantations that were called the work songs and the Negro spirituals. So that is quite a place to occupy.
Lord, I beg you good night. Lord, a good night. Good night. Lay down, brother Spence. I want you to lay and take your rest. I want you to lay your head now. Your Savior's breast. I love you. Oh, Jesus, love you. Beg you good night. Lord, good night. One is a morning bread early and soon good night, Lord good night. Another creaking of the spirit of the shower beyond a good night, Lord good night. Lord, I go walking in the valley of the shadow of death, good night, Lord good night. He rose and start your comfort me, good night, Lord good night. The sound was your follow me on a good night. Lord, good night. John the Wise said I saw the sign, good night. Lord, good night. John said I saw the noble love sign, good night. Lord, good night. Tell the day for the knock, the wonderful boat, good night. Lord, good night. She beating on the down, getting water to flow to good night. Lord, good night.
Okay, so one of the fabulous discoveries I made singing this music was that our ancestors were using biblical images, but they were putting inside of it African beliefs about life and death, and they were not afraid to die. That is something that I inherited in the Bahamas, watching people literally say or lay down and say that they're dying, because there was always this joy of going towards the light. Dying was not a tragedy. It was something that you were leaving the earthly prison, the flesh, and you were heading home. And so it's always one bright morning. And the songs, if you were, are fabulous. There is an amazing repertory. They're vast and different. Now, if he can find me singing, I'll do you a little bit of what I did.
Living down inside again. Living down inside again.
Lord, in the morning.
Oh, my sorrow, soon be over, but I'm living down inside again. Living down inside again.
Lord, in the morning.
Living down inside again.
Sorrows happen.
Oh, my sorrow, soon be over, but I'm living down inside again.
Johnny's hard number on
But
Saturday.
I'm living down inside again. Lord, I remember this morning when I'm living down inside again.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, my sorrow, soon be over, but I'm living down inside again. Oh, Lord, I remember that morning when I'm living down inside again. In the valley of the shadow of death, I'm living down inside. His rod and staff that comfort me. Oh, my sorrow.
arriving that on that bright morning and the joy of being delivered. And so it got to the point where as I sang these songs, not only do they re-energize you, because of course they're charged, and they give you information. And I thought, you know, this really sounds like the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And so there was a project to write a book on the rhyming spirituals and take the songs and explain the fabulous heritage that we have in the Bahamas. And so that's me, with a trio that, by the miracle that is, they're not Bahamians. Alex, who is a real bass voice, and Charlie Man, that very high voice that you hear, is a young man. And there's me, the rhymer, who's telling the story. And we, you know, there was a point when Daniela says, "You're ready, you can go on the road." And at that particular time, I got an offer to do an album that's called A Bahamian in Paris. And so I shifted direction, but going back and hearing it now, I'm saying this really has to be done. It really has to be brought forward. Okay, so that is rhyming spirituals. As you can hear, there are 3 voices, and they're turning at different cadences. And then there's this voice that's telling the story, and it is just a fabulous, fabulous kind of music that is specific to the Bahamas. It's not sung anywhere else in the world. It's our music. And when they came here from the south, the songs that they would talk about the land would transform into the sea, because they were on the sea. And so they would be talking about everything related to life and the sea, and it had everything to do with dying and living, and how you live and how you die. And so they were rich in folklore that they were passing on to us. This brings me to a project that I came home and I started because in 1999 I came home with Daniela Longer, the same person with whom I had done the show, and thanks to whom I created that trio. And the idea was, fine, these are your childhood memories, but you know, in the Bahamas, can you still find traces of this music? Is it still there? So we made a journey to the Bahamas, and fortunately for me and for Daniela, Kayla Edwards and her team had just done the Smithsonian. And the Smithsonian is an institution that validates authentic music. And so all we had to do was say, well, we'll go here and we'll take this and we'll take that. So we contacted Kayla, and thanks to her, she set up appointments for us with different people. So we got to literally hear the Cat Island Mites, and we met different artists. Joseph Spence, of course, had passed on, but there was Israel Forbes that was still playing in Joseph Spence's playing style, so we were able to get something with him, and that turned into a 6-hour radio show on French National Radio every night, 1.5 hours on the Bahamas, and I was the interpreter, so I would be translating as people. And so while we were on Cat Island, I met a gentleman by the name of Frank Williams, and Frank Williams had a group called Frankie and the Dogs. And as he was talking about his music, he was really distraught because his instrument was, some of the buttons were not playing anymore, and he was saying to me, we're no longer transmitting. It's no longer the accordion, this music is dying. And I made a promise that I didn't know, you know, what form that would take. But I came home in 2012, November, because of my mother was ailing. And I thought, and because I actually become a singer in Paris, I actually had a career. I was, you know, I had met excellent musicians, and I had met accordionists, but I had not made the connection between the accordion and the accordion, the concertina in the Bahamas. And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, what if I needed to take the music to another level, because I knew that I was going to read this. I don't know if I will. I don't think I will. I think I'll just talk.